All right, welcome back. A 3-hour and 15-minute long marathon cabinet meeting led by President Trump, of course, just wrapped. It included more than 45 minutes of reporter questions and answers. Just wrapping up at the White House a moment ago, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem was in the room for the whole thing. She joins us now with her take on everything. I mean, we can't ask you to comment on everything because we would be here for like the next 3 days. But what was your biggest takeaway, Madam Secretary?
You know, the focus of the cabinet meeting was really about Labor Day and the fact that every one of President Trump's policies is benefiting Americans, that not only are they safer, is crime getting under control, are we deporting illegal criminals and bringing them to justice, but also the economy is getting better. People are making more in wages, that they're having the ability to provide for their families better. So the statistics were just astounding what President Trump has been able to deliver for just the American people and the average worker each and every day.
So President Trump's been talking about the possibility of sending in the National Guard to the city of Chicago next. The mayor was asked what he thinks about that plan. Take a quick listen.
They don't care about solutions to gun violence or homelessness or immigration. They just don't want to see it. They don't want our communities to be safer for all of us. They just want to play on people's fears and anxieties, to seize more power for themselves.
That's the mayor talking about you, Madam Secretary, the president, and your colleagues in the cabinet.
You know, during the cabinet meeting, the president spoke specifically about how low the approval ratings are for that mayor in the city of Chicago, that his own people don't support him or what he's saying because he cares only about politics. He doesn't care about their safety. So that's what I think is so remarkable about what's going on right now in this country with Democrats opposing crime prevention. They literally are fighting President Trump, who is just trying to keep their people safe. So President Trump reiterated today over and over again throughout the cabinet meeting that he will keep America safe, that he will continue to do what he needs to do in these cities that are overridden with criminals and terrorists and people who are harming the citizens that live there. He's going to go there and help them keep as safe as he possibly can, and he's going to do everything he can to fight these liberal, socialist, terrible leaders that are in these cities that are harming their individuals.
A lot of folks in D.C. are, as you well know, not supportive of the deployment of the National Guard. But, Madam Secretary, even among Washingtonians who are supportive and appreciate the Guard's presence here, I have spoken to folks a lot of folks, candidly, who say they're not deployed in the right spots. They're going to the monuments, they're going to places that are perfectly safe. Meanwhile, you know, Ward 7 and 8 that are overrun by crime are still suffering. What do you say to that?
Well, Jillian, this city is completely different than it was just 13 days ago. What President Trump has been absolutely remarkable, and he's not planning on going anywhere. So those communities that are noticing a difference, they're going to be transformed by the fact that we have individuals here in law enforcement that are allowed to do their jobs for the first time. President Trump spoke today about how much we're enjoying partnering with local law enforcement, that those officers that are out in the streets are amazing human beings who just want to be able to protect those communities. So we need the mayor of D.C. to step up, to start doing her job and working with the president to do all that we can to make sure that these cities' streets become safe and continue to build on the success we've had there. But also use that to go from city to city across this country and pressure these politicians to get on board with keeping their people safe. What is going to be the story here in Washington can happen in Chicago, can happen in Boston, can happen in San Francisco. I told the president the other day, I said, listen, people in D.C. are finally remembering what it feels like to be free. They've walked around scared and terrified and not when worried about what they're going to do and how they're going to get from place to place and keep their families safe, that they forgot what it was like to live without that darkness hovering over them all the time. The last 12 to 13 days, they're remembering now what it can feel like to go to a park and play, what it can feel like to walk down a street and not have to worry that somebody's going to attack you or harm you. And so that feeling will be proliferated throughout this country as more and more of these communities become safer from President Trump's leadership.
And before I let you go, what happens the day, the week, the month after the Guard leaves? And crime in the streets in Washington, D.C. kind of comes roaring back. What's the plan then?
Well, President Trump has said that he's going to continue to use his emergency powers to do what he needs to do to keep people safe. But I think the people here will speak. The individuals that are in leadership positions in this city will start to listen to the families that live here and recognize that they need to make different decisions in the future. They need to start working with President Trump and working with all of us to make sure that these criminals are brought to justice and that their crimes are stopped. Overwhelmingly, the public is behind what President Trump is doing. And we're hoping that if these leaders can't get on board, then we need new leadership, and we'll make sure that we get them, because that's exactly what D.C. deserves. It's what every single citizen deserves in this country.
Madam Secretary, want to be cognizant of your time. Thank you so much for stepping right out of that 3-hour-plus meeting to join us. It's wonderful to talk to you as always.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.